Macron began his public service career in 2004 as a finance inspector for the French Ministry of Economy and Finance. 4 years later, he bought out his government contract for €50,000, approximately $70,000, to enter the private sector, a move that friends warned would jeopardize any future political ambitions. In September 2008 he joined Rothschild & C Bank, the French division of the international Rothschild financial group, as an investment banker. Macron advanced quickly at the company, and in 2012 he brokered Nestlé's blockbuster $12 billion acquisition of Pfizer's baby food division. Macron reportedly earned €2.9 million, about $3.8 million, for his role in the deal. While still at Rothschild, Macron began working with Hollande as the latter campaigned for the Socialist Party's nomination for president ahead of the 2012 election. After Hollande won the presidency, Macron joined his administration as a deputy chief of staff and economic advisor. Macron became the face of France at international summits, and in 2014 he was elevated to finance minister. He promoted a package of reforms known as the Loi Macron Law, in an effort to spark the moribund French economy, but the legislation triggered a revolt from the left wing of the Socialist Party. In February 2015, Prime Minister Manuel Valls was forced to invoke Article 49 of the French Constitution, a rarely used measure that allows a bill to pass without the consent of Parliament on the condition that the government is then subjected to a vote of confidence. Valls easily survived that vote, and the Loi Macron was enacted. As a result, restrictions on conducting business on Sundays were loosened and some professions were deregulated, but the labor market was largely untouched, and France's 35-hour workweek remained intact. The Loi Macron amounted to a relatively modest reform package for a country grappling with persistently high unemployment and slow growth, but it nevertheless sparked a fierce backlash from both the left and the right. Hollande's approval rating plummeted as a result of France's anemic economic performance and Europe's ongoing migrant crisis. Both of these factors would fuel the rise of Marine Le Pen and her nationalist anti-immigrant party, the National Front. Macron began to distance himself from Hollande, even while still serving in his administration, but deadly terrorist attacks in Paris in November 2015 caused him to delay his break with the socialist government. In April 2016, Macron announced the creation of En Marche Forward, a popular movement that he characterized as a democratic revolution against a sclerotic political system. Echoing the third way paradigm that had been promoted by President Bill Clinton in the United States and Prime Minister Tony Blair in Britain, Macron proposed a center-left fusion of populism and neoliberalism. Observers noted that the timing of the announcement, slightly more than a year ahead of the 2017 presidential election, strongly hinted at an outsider bid for the Élysée Palace. Macron's relationship with Hollande became increasingly strained following the launch of En Marche, but this was hardly a liability given the president's single-digit public approval numbers. On August 30, 2016, Macron submitted his resignation, and on November 16 he formally declared his candidacy for president. The campaign took a turn in Macron's favor later that month, when the Republicans elected former Prime Minister François Fillon as their party's nominee. Fillon topped former President Nicolas Sarkozy and former Prime Minister Alain Juppé in the intra-party contest. Fillon had been marked as the likely front-runner in the presidential race, but his campaign imploded amid accusations that he had created fake jobs for members of his family and had improperly accepted tens of thousands of euros in gifts. Hollande, perceiving no realistic path to a second term, announced in December 2016 that he would not seek re-election. Valls resigned as prime minister and declared his candidacy, but the socialists selected Benoît Hamon, a political outsider from the party's far left wing, as their nominee. Valls and Juppé, each of whom represented their party's moderate factions, subsequently declared their support for Macron, a significant coup for a candidate who did not have major party backing. Historically low support for France's two major parties opened the door for independent candidates, and the race effectively became a three-way contest between Macron, Le Pen, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, a former socialist who had run for president in 2012 with the support of the French Communist Party. With Le Pen drawing from the far right and Mélenchon from the far left, Macron's centrist anti-establishment message found support from a broad cross-section of the populace. Notably, Macron was also the only prominent pro-European Union candidate in a race that carried a strong undercurrent of Euroscepticism. When French voters went to the polls for the first round of the presidential election on April 23, 2017, Macron topped a field of 11 candidates, capturing 24% of the vote. Le Pen was second with 21%, guaranteeing her a spot in the second round to be held 2 weeks later. Fillon and Mélenchon finished in a virtual dead heat for third, each claiming about 20%, while Hamon was a distant fifth with just over 6%. For the first time in the history of the Fifth Republic, neither of France's two main parties were represented in the runoff. Just days before that event, hackers uploaded tens of thousands of internal Macron campaign communications to the internet in an apparent attempt to influence the election. The attack was attributed to the same Russian-backed group that targeted the Democratic Party during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, but the effect of the so-called Macron leaks information dump was negligible, owing at least in part to French media laws banning campaign coverage in the hours prior to an election. In the second round, held on May 7, 2017, Macron won a convincing two-thirds of the vote, becoming, at age 39, France's youngest president. Voters still found ways to voice their dissatisfaction with both Macron and Le Pen, however. Roughly one-fourth of French voters abstained, entirely the highest rate of electorate non-participation in nearly a half-century, while more than 4 million voters cast intentionally blank or spoiled ballots. Macron's victory was welcomed outside of France, with the euro soaring to a 6-month high upon the news. With no existing party structure, Macron's first challenge as president would be to secure a working majority in the French parliament. When legislative elections were held in June 2017, Macron delivered a convincing victory, winning 308 of 577 seats in the National Assembly. With additional support from François Bayrout's Democratic Movement, MoDem, Macron's coalition commanded a total of 350 seats. Although the result marked a stunning performance for a party that was just 14 months old, turnout was just 42.6%, the lowest rate of voter participation in a parliamentary election in modern French history.